Verses 15 to 20. In their ways, v. 15-17 their feet are swift to shed blood, that is, they are very industrious to compass any cruel design, ready to lay hold of all such opportunities. Wherever they go, destruction and misery go along with them. These are their companions, destruction and misery to the people of God, to the country and neighborhood where they live, to the land and nation, and to themselves at last. Besides the destruction and misery that are at the end of their ways, death is the end of these things. Destruction and misery are in their ways, their sin is its own punishment. A man needs no more to make him miserable than to be a slave to his sins, and the way of peace have they not known, that is, they know not how to preserve peace with others, nor how to obtain peace for themselves. They may talk of peace, such a peace as is in the devil's palace, while he keeps it, but they are strangers to all true peace, they know not the things that belong to their peace. The root of all this we have, there is no fear of God before their eyes, v. 18. The fear of God is here put for all practical religion, which consists in an awful and serious regard to the word and will of God as our rule, to the honor and glory of God as our end. Wicked people have not this before their eyes, that is, they do not steer by it, they are governed by other rules, aim at other ends. This is quoted from PS 36:1. Where no fear of God is, no good is to be expected. The fear of God is would lay a restraint upon our spirits, and keep them right, Na 5:15. When one's fear is cast off, prayer is restrained, Job 15:4, and then all goes to wreck and ruin quickly. So that we have here a short account of the general depravity and corruption of mankind, and may say, O Adam, what hast thou done? God made man upright, but thus he hath sought out many inventions. From all this Paul infers that it is in vain to look for justification by the works of the law, and that it is to be had only by faith, which is the point he has been all along proving, from ch 1:17, and which he lays down, v. 28, as the summary of his discourse, with the quod erat demonstrandum which was to be demonstrated. We conclude that a man is justified by faith, without the deeds of the law, not by the deeds of the first law of pure innocence, which left no room for repentance, nor the deeds of the law of nature, how highly soever improved, nor the deeds of the ceremonial law, the blood of bulls and goats could not take away sin, nor the deeds of the moral law, which are certainly included, for he speaks of that law by which is the knowledge of sin and those works which might be matter of boasting. Man, in his depraved state, under the power of such corruption, could never, by any works of his own, gain acceptance with God, but it must be resolved purely into the free grace of God, given through Jesus Christ to all true believers that receive it as a free gift. If we had never sinned, our obedience to the law would have been our righteousness, do this, and live. But having sinned, and being corrupted, nothing that we can do will atone for our former guilt. It was by their obedience to the moral law that the Pharisees looked for justification, Lu 18:11. Now there are two things from which the apostle here argues, the guiltiness of man, to prove that we cannot be justified by the works of the law, and the glory of God, to prove that we must be justified by faith. He argues from man's guiltiness, to show the folly of expecting justification by the works of the law. The argument is very plain, we can never be justified and saved by the law that we have broken. A convicted traitor can never come off by pleading the statute of 25 Edward 3, for that law discovers his crime and condemns him. Indeed, if he had never broken it, he might have been justified by it, but now it is past that he has broken it, and there is no way of coming off but by pleading the act of indemnity, upon which he has surrendered and submitted himself, and humbly and penitently claiming the benefit of it and casting himself upon it. Now concerning the guiltiness of man. He fastens it particularly upon the Jews, for they were the men that made their boast of the law, and set up for justification by it. He had quoted several scriptures out of the Old Testament to show this corruption. Now, says he, v. 19, this that the law says, it says to those who are under the law, this conviction belongs to the Jews as well as others, for it is written in their law. The Jews boasted of their being under the law, and placed a great deal of confidence in it, but, says he, the law convicts and condemns you see it does. That every mouth may be stopped, that all boasting may be silenced. See the method that God takes both in justifying and condemning. He stops every mouth. Those that are justified have their mouth stopped by a humble conviction, those that are condemned have their mouth stopped too, for they shall at last be convinced, Jude 15, and sent speechless to hell. He extends it in general to all the world, that all the world may become guilty before God. If the world likes in wickedness, 1 John 5:19, to be sure it is guilty may become guilty, that is, may be proved guilty, liable to punishment, all by nature children of wrath, F2:3. They must all plead guilty. Those that stand most upon their own justification will certainly be cast. Guilty before God is a dreadful word, before an all-seeing God, that is not, nor can be, deceived in his judgment before a just and righteous judge, who will by no means clear the guilty. All are guilty, and therefore all have need of a righteousness wherein to appear before God. For all have sinned, v. 23, all are sinners by nature, by practice, and have come short of the glory of God, have failed of that which is the chief end of man. Come short, as the archer comes short of the mark, as the runner comes short of the prize, so come short, as not only not to win, but to be great losers. Come short of the glory of God. Come short of glorifying God. CCH 121. They glorified him not as God. Man was placed at the head of the visible creation, actively to glorify that great Creator whom the inferior creatures could glorify only objectively, but man by sin comes short of this, and, instead of glorifying God, dishonors him. It is a very melancholy consideration, to look upon the children of men, who were made to glorify God, and to think how few there are that do it. Come short of glorying before God. There is no boasting of innocency, if we go about to glory before God, to boast of anything we are, or have, or do, this will be an everlasting stop hat. We have all sinned, and this will silence us. We may glory before men, who are short-sighted, and cannot search our hearts, who are corrupt, as we are, and well enough pleased with sin, but there is no glorying before God, who cannot endure to look upon iniquity. Come short of being glorified by God. Come short of justification, or acceptance with God, which is glory begun. Come short of the holiness or sanctification, which is the glorious image of God upon man, and have overthrown all hopes and expectations of being glorified with God in heaven by any righteousness of their own. It is impossible now to get to heaven in the way of spotless innocency. That passage is blocked up. There is a cherub and a flaming sword set to keep that way to the tree of life. Further, to drive us off from expecting justification by the law, he ascribes this conviction to the law, v. 24. By the law is the knowledge of sin. That law which convicts and condemns us can never justify us. The law is the straight rule, that rectum which is index sui et obliquat, which points out the right and the wrong. It is the proper use and intendment of the law to open our wound, and therefore not likely to be the remedy. That which is searching is not sanative. Those that would know sin must get the knowledge of the law in its strictness, extent, and spiritual nature. If we compare our own hearts and lives with the rule, we shall discover wherein we have turned aside. Paul makes this use of the law. Therefore by the deeds of the law shall no flesh be justified in his sight. No flesh shall be justified, no man, no corrupted man, General 6:3, for that he also is flesh, sinful and depraved, therefore not justified, because we are flesh. The corruption that remains in our nature will forever obstruct any justification by our own works, which, coming from flesh, must needs taste of the cask. Not justified in his sight. He does not deny that justification which was by the deeds of the law in the sight of the church, they were, in their church estate, as embodied in a polity, a holy people, a nation of priests, but as the conscience stands in relation to God, in his sight, we cannot be justified by the deeds of the law.